Hi everybody, welcome back to Black Cat Forge. I'm glad you're here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. So today is our last hook video in the Blacksmithing 101 series. And we're going to make a very different type of hook, and we're going to learn a new technique. And what we're going to make is the spade hook. And if you can tell, it's the normal hook with the twist, but up here at the top, it looks just like an ace of spades. So we're going to learn the technique for making that today. We're also going to mix things up a little bit. We're going to make a different type of finial. Remember, finial is just an ending. It's something that makes your piece look fancy. They don't always have to be tapered to a point, rounded, and bent over. This is just where I flattened it and just made a different type of finial. And also, instead of making the hook around the horn of the anvil, we're just going to use a little jig that I made. I just want everybody to learn that there's always different ways of doing things in blacksmithing. There is not a set way of doing things. So many people sometimes get hung up on there's only one way to do something in blacksmithing, and that's not true. I always tell my students, you can go ask 10 different blacksmiths how to do one thing, and you're going to probably get 10 different answers. That doesn't mean that one answer is correct and 9 answers are wrong. It is how people have figured out to do things over time. You got to figure out which one works the best for you. So I'm going to show all the different ways to do things that I know how to do. So before we get into the project, I'd just like everybody to hit like and subscribe. It only helps me stay motivated to make these videos for you. I love doing this, and every time I get new subscribers and I get likes, it just keeps me going. And also, any comments, please put them down in there. I'll answer them. Please, I would just love to hear some good comments from people. So, enough for my little commercial. So, what are we going to need for today's project? If you're following along, you're going to need 7 inches of quarter square steel. Of course, you're going to need your hammer. You're going to need a center punch. You're going to need a pair of scrolling tongs or a pair of needle nose pliers. Either will work. You'll need your wooden mallet. You'll also need a twisting wrench. And we had talked about this a long time ago, a soapstone marker. You will need a soapstone marker. We'll get into that later. And if you want to bend your hook around the horn, that's fine. If you want to use this little jig, I just took some scrap round laying around, heated up, and just bent it into a U shape. That's all I did. You'll need one of those. So let's talk about the steps that we're going to take. I've outlined them here on my chart. I apologize for my lack of artistic abilities. If I did have artistic abilities, we'd probably be watching a different YouTube channel now. So all we're going to do is we're going to start with our square stock. We are going to taper it. Now, in earlier videos, we've tapered everything into a super long point. We're not doing that today. We're going to taper this to a very dull point. When you've tapered it, I want you to look at your steel and think about the Washington Monument. You know, the Washington Monument comes up and it comes to a very dull point. We don't want a super long, drawn out point. We want it dull. After you've done this point, you're going to take your soapstone or something, and you're going to mark out from under the base of your point. We're going to mark out a cube, a square. That's just for your reference. We're then going to lay this steel before we get it hot on the anvil, and we're going to put a mark on the anvil where the cube lines up. We'll do this here in a moment. I just want to explain this. Stay with me. Then we're going to get our steel hot. We're going to lay our steel on our mark, and we're going to hit it with our hammer. It's what's called a half on, half off blow. So in other words, half our hammer is going to be on the anvil. The other half of our hammer is going to be off the anvil. When we hit this steel, it's going to bloom out into this nice spade shape. I know it sounds confusing. It's really not. But I will confess that when I was in beginning blacksmithing, this was probably the hardest project that I had to make. It took me probably a month of classes just getting to the point that I could make a decent spade. And the one thing I learned from that was, one, I wasn't a bad blacksmith, but my instructor had one way of teaching things. And it worked great for him. I do not fault him for that. That's what worked best for him. But it wasn't until I started going out on YouTube and looking at different ways of doing spade hooks that I found the guy, actually, he doesn't live too far from where I'm at, Voo Doo Forge. If you want to go check out his videos, he's got some great videos. But he did a way of making a spade hook that just clicked with me. And I went to my next class. I remembered what I had learned from his videos, and sure enough, his way worked, and I made a spade. And I was able to finish the project and move on. So right then and there, I learned there is not just one way to do things in blacksmithing. That is, if you ever learn anything from these videos, is always try to find the method that works best for you. I'm not big on getting hung up on traditional blacksmithing. If there's a tool available, I'm going to use it. If there's a method available, I'm going to try it. That's just the way things should be. At least that's my opinion. If you got a different opinion, please leave a comment. I'd love to talk to you about it. Anyway, enough talking. Let's get to the forge. Let's get this spade hook made. Thanks. So we've got our steel hot. We're going to put it on the edge just like always. But we're just going to be very mindful that we're going to make a very dull pointed taper. You need to think the whole time Washington Monument. We don't want a extremely drawn out taper. We just want a very dull point. So here's what we have so far. I'm going to give it one more heat and we're going to put the point on it. So let's just finish up our point. Okay, so we got our point finished. We got everything back into true. So the next thing we want to do is I'm going to take my soapstone, and with my soapstone I'm going to draw a line at the base of my taper. And then I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, what would make a square? So that would be a line like so. This is just a reference point for myself. This will come off in the fire. But what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take my steel and I'm going to put this bottom mark of my square on the edge of my anvil face. Then I'm going to take my soapstone and I'm going to put a mark right here. So I know when I bring this out of the fire, it's got to be right there. This is my reference point. So when I bring this out of the fire, and please make sure it is very, very hot because we want this to move easy. We're going to bring our hammer down half on, half off. And we're just going to do blows half on, half off. Now, the one thing to watch for is this thing blooms out. Once you see a spade shape, stop. It's so tempting to keep hitting it afterwards. And if you hit it on one side or the other, you can mess up your spade. Probably the best piece of advice that was given to me, a lot of good advice has been given to me over the years, but as a new blacksmith, the best advice that was given to me was, the enemy of good is better. In other words, when you have your steel where you want it, stop. Don't go with, oh yeah, I can hit it one more time and maybe make it a little bit better. Let's not do that. So I'm going to put this in the fire. We're going to get it good and hot, and then we're going to make our spade. Okay, so we're out of the fire. We're going to place our steel on our mark, and we're just going to do half on, half off blows, being mindful of how our steel looks. So right now, this is what we have, and it's not looking too bad. And if you notice right here, I'm a little short while this has come out nicely. This is normal. So, and also if you look, there's a lot of thickness left in this steel so I can work it. So I'm going to heat this up, and I'm going to concentrate my blows more on this side than I am on this side. And we should have a nice evened out spade. This is the importance of stopping and looking at your work before you continue on. I'm going to put my steel back again on the mark, and I'm going to focus my hits. And right there, I am stopping because we have a spade. This is a very nice spade, and I am happy with it, so I'm going to stop. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our finial. And remember when we talked about our hooks, especially when we were doing the drive hook, we were talking about the orientation of how things will lay out. So this back part of the spade, this is the back side of your hook. This is what will be next to the wall. So with our spade on the bottom, we're going to make our finial, and we're going to twist it down this way. So they're going to be in the same orientation. We're going to do this finial a little different than what we've done before. All I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten out a piece, and I'm going to draw it out to about 3/4 to an inch. I'm going to flatten it with alternating blows on each side of the front and the back. So it's a flat taper is what I'm going to be going for. And then I'm going to keep it the same width as my steel. Once I get it out, I'm going to take my scrolling fork or my needle nose pliers, and then I'm just going to twist a nice little flat circle. It's a different finial, and I like to mix things up every now and then. So let's get this in the fire, and let's start working on our finial. So I'm back at the anvil. I've got my spade in the right orientation. So I'm just going to start drawing out to a nice little flat taper. Like I said, about 3/4 to an inch in length. And I'm also going to try to keep it as much of the same width as possible. Okay, and we're losing heat, so I'm going to heat this back up. All right, so we're just going to finish drawing this out. Make sure everything's good and straight. That looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my scrolling pliers after this next heat, and I'm going to scroll it down so it matches the back side of the hook. So we've got it hot, and all we're going to do is we're just going to grab it here with our scrolling pliers. If you don't have a pair of scrolling pliers, a pair of needle nose pliers will be just fine. I just like these scrolling pliers because they don't leave teeth marks. So I've got that scrolled, and now I'm just going to do a little cleanup work. So there is our finial. Like I said, there's no true way of doing finials. You can make them any way you want. It just makes your ending not look boring. So we're going to move over to the vise, and we're going to talk about doing bending our hook with the jig. If you want to use the horn of the anvil, that's fine. I just want to show a different way. So I'm going to move the camera, and then we're going to talk about bending our hook portion. All right, so if you remember, we just talked about this jig is just nothing more than some round stock I had laying around, and I just bent it into a U shape. So once we get this hot, again, we're going to quench our finial like we talked about earlier videos, so we don't want to mess up our finial. Also, the finial is going to be playing an important part because I'm going to set this finial and I'm going to lock it into place. And the big thing to watch out for is as I lay this in place, as I lock it in place, that everything is on the same plane. It's not twisted up, it's not twisted down. Everything's flat. I really want to make sure this part is as hot as I can get it. And I'm going to start to bend it. And as I'm bending it, it may not follow this, but the more I pull and the more I move it, the more it's going to lock into place and we'll have our hook. So let's get it hot and then we'll come right back to the camera. So I've got my finial quenched and I've got everything in the right plane. So all I'm going to do now is I am just going to keep working and pulling my hook until I have it about the way I want it. And right there, you can see we have our hook. But now we've got a little bit of a curve right here. I'm just going to lay it over the back side of my anvil and just give it a tap to align it. So now that I got that back straightened up, we have our hook, but it's still a little too open. So I'm going to heat it back up and I'm going to put it back in the jig and we're going to give it one more twist. So we're just going to lock it in again like we had talked about. And we're just going to put a little pressure on it. And there we have our hook. Our hook is made. So the next step is we're going to heat this up and we're going to put our twist in it with our twisting wrench. We've done this before, so that's the next step. Just came out of the forge. We're going to lock our hook in. Just like always, we're going to take our twisting wrench. We're going to put it up here at the top. And we're just going to take our time as we twist, and we're going to try to lift up as we do twist. Remember, the faster you twist, the tighter and uglier your scroll gets. So we're not in a race. We are in a race with time, but just taking our time. And as we finish this out, we're going to make sure that everything, our spade and our hook, is in the best alignment it can be. That looks absolutely wonderful. So we're going to loosen out our hook. We're going to hit this with a brush, get the scale off of it real quick. So right now, here's where we are. And as always, even though the twist looks pretty good and pretty straight, we're going to move over to the anvil next. We're going to use our wooden block and our wooden hammer. We're just going to make sure everything's good in alignment without messing up our twist. Okay, so we came out of the fire. We're just going to lay our hook on our block of wood. We're just going to start working it, making sure that everything is good and in alignment. Yes, we have a little bit of smoke and a little bit of flames. That's fine. It's a blacksmith shop. So here we go. We have everything nice and well, no, we're not all the way aligned just yet. Okay, so we've got most everything aligned. Now. I'm just not happy with this little bend right there. So I'm going to heat it back up, and while I'm holding it in the tongs, I'm just going to bend it back just a little bit. Or actually, what I'll probably do is just put it right here over the horn of the over the back end of the anvil, and straighten that out. Okay, so we're just going to bring this back right here. I'm just going to open that up a little bit. There we go. I'm much happier with that. That looks really nice right now. So we just got a couple more little things to do. While we still have some heat in this, we're just going to take our wire brush and we're going to get rid of all the scale that we can get rid of. Okay, so now that we got all the scale off, we just got a couple more little things we want to do. One is we want to take our center punch and our hammer, and we're going to try to figure out roughly where center is on our spade. Once we got that, we're going to hold this here. That's not exactly where I want it to be. That looks better. Okay, so now we got center marked where we want it to be. We're just going to take our hammer, one tap, and now you see we have a indentation made on our hook or on our spade. That's when we drill the screw hole. That's where it's going to go. So when you want to drill this, you can use a drill press, you can use a hand drill. I do have an antique blacksmithing drill. I've still got a little bit of work left to do on it. Once I get it working, I'll show you. But I'm just going to go off camera real quick and drill this. So there we have our hole drilled. There's one last thing I want to do. Just if you haven't seen my video on finishing your work, I'm going to go ahead and put a finish on this. Okay, so all I did was I just got my hook black hot, and I'm doing it over a paper towel so I don't make a mess. I'm just going to take some beeswax, and I'm just going to rub the beeswax on here. If you notice, the beeswax is dripping all over the paper towel, and sometimes, yes, beeswax will catch on fire. Just make sure you blow it out real quick. And there we go. We have a nice finished hook. I'm going to bring up a little closer here to the camera so you can now see how it looks. So we're going to change camera positions real quick, and we're going to wrap this video up. Alrighty, so congratulate yourself if you followed along, or if you make one later. You've made the last hook in the series. We've learned a lot doing these hooks, and the reason we start out with the drive hook, the S hook, and the spade hook is you're learning the basics of blacksmithing. You're learning to do your hammer control. You're learning how to draw out. You're learning how to twist. You're learning now how to do half on, half off blows. All these things have now went into what I call your blacksmithing tool bag. And you'll be amazed as we go through the next projects that pretty much everything that we're doing builds off of what you learned by doing 3 simple hooks. And it's not just doing 3 simple hooks and calling it quits. You need to practice, just like any other thing. If you're going to play a musical instrument, if you're going to learn to drive, if you're going to learn how to use a computer, you have to practice, 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 practice. So don't just make these 3 hooks and say, yay, I'm done. Work on them. If you were working with me one-on-one in the forge and I was your instructor, I would have you make a hook, the same hook, 3 times over, because it helps you build good muscle memory and habits. So thank you for being with me as we finished out the hooks. We've got some really, really fun projects coming up. I think everybody's going to love the next project coming up. I'm going to start working on it here soon. I just released a new tip of the day. I hope you watch that. Please hit like and subscribe. It keeps me motivated. I love doing these videos for the blacksmithing community. I want to help you become the best blacksmiths you can be. So thank you. Have a great day, and I'll catch you later.